Today, I'm going to be talking about one of the core tenets of product-led growth, which is removing friction. Let's dive into it.
SaaS CMO Pro.
Hey guys, Bill Macaitis, former CMO of Slack, CMO of Zendesk, and SVP of Marketing at Salesforce. I love product-led growth. I'm a huge fan of it. I'm doing a series of videos on all the different topics. And today's video is about how to remove friction. So let's talk about what is even friction to begin with, right? You'll hear it time and time again in product-led growth where they will talk about removing friction. And really, friction can come in a lot of different areas. It's basically just where it's hard to use your product, right? And this manifests itself in a lot of different ways. There's pricing friction, adoption friction, cognitive friction, viral invite friction. It's anything that's just like, it's not easy to do. It's not simple, it's not intuitive, or it doesn't naturally lead you to it. So let's talk about those. Let's start with pricing friction, right? So if you're in SaaS B2B, you're in SaaS AI, you're coming out with innovative products, one of the first friction points that will come up is pricing, right? What tends to happen a lot of times is companies will go, hey, we're just going to sell to the enterprise. And when you do that, you're creating a lot of friction, right? Because a lot of times you just price the enterprise, you just have one or maybe two paid plans, but it's a pretty big hurdle for someone that just wants to come in and start using your product and try it out. And you kind of see this evolution of how people have bought software, right? Where in the way back when you'd have on-prem software, you could only buy that, via the CIO, CTO, because they had to install it on their servers. It was kind of gated. Then SaaS comes out and it kind of has this go-to-market breakthrough where now individual users can start, testing the software, trialing it, start to use it before you actually have to buy it, right? And that's pricing friction, right? Whatever segment you're going after, if the only way they can go in is they have to buy it right off the bat, well, that creates a lot of friction. Right? It's something I've talked about extensively in my freemium video, if you want to check that out, where you want to have value before purchase decision. The more value you have, the longer that free trial. Maybe you have a freemium plan. Maybe it's not crippleware, it's very full functioning. You're getting value, then purchase decision, right? But when you have a big wall, a big friction, right? Hey, you can only use it if you talk to a salesperson. You can only use it, maybe a free trial, but you can only use it for 7 days. Or that first price is just too much, right? With all these decisions, I put myself in just, a user or a prospect's shoes, right? There's a lot of different choices. They're busy. Think of your daily life, right? When you're working, you've got tons of meetings, you've got fires that are coming up, you're on 7 different projects. And maybe one of those is like you're kind of exploring, and using a new piece of software. Well, you don't have a lot of time for that, right? You want to allow someone to just come in and start using it. You don't want pricing to be kind of a barrier there. The second area I want to talk about is cognitive friction, right? So this is kind of related to pricing, but the idea here is that a lot of times you'll have a pricing and packaging plan that's just really hard to understand. A lot of times, my current role, I serve as a board advisor or independent board member for a lot of these SaaS and AI companies. And one of the first things, I'll ask them when we're in the initial stages, or I'll take a look at it, is like, hey, describe your pricing to me. Like, how does it work? And some of these times they'll explain it to me. It takes them longer than a minute. It takes them like 5 minutes to explain how the pricing works. I leave it. I'm still confused. I'm like, wait, what? And this is someone that's like doing like B2B pricing and packaging for a long time. When you have cognitive friction, when you have things that are just really hard to understand, it slows people down, right? And they're going to be a little less sure about moving forward. You want to be able to have it so that when you explain your pricing and packaging, you can do it in less than 30 seconds and someone gets it. And it shouldn't even be like a prospect, right? A lot of times, like, I would test stuff out. You just talk to someone, a friend or colleague, maybe that's not in a space. Okay, hey, let me explain how our pricing works, right? And explain it off. And, do they kind of get it? I love pricing innovation, but at the same time, you don't want to go too far off the rails, right? There are some very solidified per user or usage-based pricing models that people are kind of familiar with and comfortable with. So if you use those, you're going to be reducing that cognitive friction. And that's a key area. It's going to help you grow faster. Anytime you reduce friction, that's a great thing. All right. So the third area of friction that I see often in these SaaS and AI products is adoption friction, right? So this is, hey, if someone is interested, maybe you're using some more advanced tactics. You have a freemium model or a free trial. People are in there, they're starting to use it, but it's just hard to use, right? And you'll see this time and time again, especially for like enterprise, software, whether it's AI, whether it's B2B. A lot of times it's very difficult for a new user to come in and start using it. Now, why is that? A lot of times these companies are a little older, right? Maybe they started a while back and the product started off pretty simple, but your product roadmap is just feature after feature after feature after feature after feature. And eventually you get what I call the Photoshop effect, where once upon a day, Bill could use Photoshop and is to go in there and do things and crop photos and change exposure. And then so many layers were added on, so much functionality that eventually it was, I couldn't even find where do I crop a photo anymore. And I'm like, okay, I got to find another piece of software. And I did. And it was simple and beautiful. And I use that now and I pay them to use it. But it's a good example of where a lot of times your software is naturally just going to get more complex over time. Now you can fight that, right? I've talked about that with PLG metrics and things like measuring how simple it is to use. Have a little, in-product survey after the first week. Hey, how simple is our software to use? Thumbs up, thumbs down. All right, you're at 67% think it's simple. That's a benchmark. Try to improve it. Get to 70%, get to 80%, whatever it is. And send product cycles on improving it to make it more simple and easy to use versus just adding more features, right? Which is going to make it harder and harder to use there. Adoption friction you can reduce in a lot of ways too. Bring in your marketers, right? A lot of times with these types of things, you're thinking, oh, it's just the product team that's doing it. Marketers are really good at simplifying things. We're used to taking really complex messaging and distilling it down to a clean and crisp value proposition. Marketers do a lot of conversion rate optimization, so a lot of times when they're only, metric on leads, which I don't agree with, but they will spend a lot of time just on, hey, people arriving on the website and filling out a form and how can they improve that conversion. So it's the same method. They're kind of good at it, like looking at that adoption, right? Like what's the sign-up process look like? What is that first steps to getting their aha moment? How many clicks does it take? Where can we simplify it? Also, a lot of times what will happen with adoption friction is you will have your team of developers writing a lot of the sign-up flow or the product usage flow, right? They're writing all the prompts. And what ends up happening with that, no offense to my fellow developers, is that, sometimes they just come out very dry, next, cancel, accept. You have proceeded ahead with contract 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, do this stuff. It's just it comes out very unnatural. And sometimes when you have a marketing go in it, they can add a little more personality to it, have a unique editorial tone and voice. We did that a lot at Slack where we had our folks from marketing go in and write a lot of the dialogue, for the onboarding, for the product usage, for the release notes, right? And made them fun and witty and just, you enjoyed actually going through that process. So adoption friction is a key area that I see a lot, and it's an easy area that you can improve if you have the team put on it and if you put the right metrics on it. All right, so the fourth area of friction I see is value friction. Now, value friction is this concept, you'll hear it a lot in product-led growth, is how quickly does it take does someone get their first aha moments, right? They've got their first, oh man, that's amazing. I just got a ton of value from using your AI tool or using your, B2B SaaS software tool, whatever it is, right? And you can measure that, right? You can literally do how many clicks does it take, right? 1, 2, literally you tally them up. You can sometimes use, if you have to write, product analytics, you can use how much time, right? Here's an event that happened. All right, well, how much time on average does a user take to get that? And the reason it's important is because, think about it, put yourself in a user's shoe, right? Maybe that value is amazing, but if it takes you an entire day to get it, an entire week, an entire month, I've worked with B2B SaaS companies where their value moment was 3 months in. 3 months, think about that. How much frustration and friction are you putting that, it takes over 3 months to get that first aha moment. You can see how that's going to have a big impact on your conversions, your ability to upgrade from free to paid, from just a retention perspective, right? It's a lot of friction that you're adding there. So, take a look at it. A lot of this ties back into the adoption friction, right? But you're thinking about just, hey, let's map out what are those key aha moments and how do we accelerate them earlier? And again, this is, when you're embarking on PLG, your product team is going to act and be metriced and plan out the roadmap very differently. It's not just, okay, we need this feature and this feature and this feature and this feature and this feature. You're really going to look at it holistically. You're thinking about, hey, from a UI perspective, from a flow perspective, like how do we re-architect our product so that people experience value faster? So that's the number 4th reason for product-led growth and how to remove friction in a big area that I see a lot. Okay, the 5th and final area of friction that I see for a lot of B2B SaaS companies, a lot of AI companies, is what we call invite or viral friction. So depending on how you built your software, depending on how you built your AI tool, you have decisions to make on, hey, who can come in and just start using it? Who can, start playing with it? How does it work when, you have a customer and other people in the organization want to start using it, right? So in an ideal way, you'll have it set up where it's very frictionless, right? Like anyone in the company can start using it. So I talked about that a little bit in my advanced pricing and packaging PLG strategy, where you can have things like ELAs, where even if you get, let's say you're using a per seat license model, even if you have 1,000 people that start using it at this company, but maybe this company has 100,000 people, you write up the language and the contract so that, hey, we're only going to pay you that first year, or we're only going to get paid for the 1,000 users. But guess what? Anyone else in the company can use it, right? You remove that friction. And then at the end of the year, we'll true up. Right now, maybe 10,000 people are using it, right? And you do the same thing for the next year, right? All right, we're only going to, charge you for 10,000, but anyone else in the company can use it, right? So you're allowing it to spread easier within an organization. If you have a freemium model, right? You're letting people come in, start using it, but also maybe you allow them to a really easy way to invite others to come in. Create kind of these viral loops. If you're putting up friction, for instance, if you only have the admin is the only one that can invite others to join. You're putting up friction if you have to go to IT to add additional users. There's lots of ways you can create friction within a AI or SaaS product when it relates to inviting others. And the thing will happen too is a lot of SaaS companies, you'll have kind of a one-to-many model, or even a B2B to C model, right? So like, for instance, if you're in the e-signing space, you're going to be sending out a lot of documents. Your customer uses your e-sign product. Well, they're sending out a lot of documents for other people that have never maybe heard of or used your service before, right? So how do you expose them, right? How do you make it reduce friction so that all these people that are receiving these contracts can also easily start using your service, right? That's invite friction. You can also use things like credits. We use that at Slack, where we said, hey, give 100, get 100. So for instance, if you invite someone else to join and they start using it, they get 100 credits and you get 100 credits, right? You're incentivizing this. You're basically just thinking any way you can create these viral loops, that you're reducing friction, that you're allowing all your users to be able to add other users. It's kind of a key area. And you can kind of see like cumulatively, maybe any one of these, like they're not going to break the bank, but when you just add friction after friction after friction, right? When you add adoption friction and pricing friction and cognitive friction and value friction and invite friction, you can see like you get in a place where you're not growing that fast, or at least you're not growing the easy way, the capital efficient way, right? You're growing via, okay, we got to cold call more people. Let's hire more BRs. Let's do more top-down sales. And that's just an inefficient way to grow. It doesn't mean you can't do it, but you don't want to have that be 100% of your growth strategy, right? Maybe that's 10% for you're going into a new vertical and you don't have any existing customers, right? Okay, maybe use a more expensive motion there. But you don't want to have that for everything. You really want to think about, if you believe in product-led growth, if you believe this is a capital efficient growth strategy, which I absolutely do, and I've seen that, it allows you to grow fast, grow much faster than your peers, more capital efficient from your peers, and you're rewarded with that in the public markets, you're rewarded with that with your multiples. You kind of have to think about friction, and you have to think about, hey, all these different levels, do I have the team thinking about that? Who is the team? Is it just the product team? Is it marketing? Is it sales? How do you loop in more shared metrics? Are you measuring the right metrics for these, right? Are you measuring how simple your product is? Are you measuring how long it takes for them to get to that aha moment? Are you talking to other people about your pricing and packaging and seeing, do they get it? Or are they like, what the heck's going on? You have to remember too, a lot of people that watch these videos, they're CEOs, they're founders, they've been around their product for so long that for them, like they get it because they've spent their entire lives on this and thinking about it and building it out. So for them, it's like, oh yeah, of course, this is how you do the adoption, right? Or of course, this is how pricing works, right? But you got to put yourselves in that beginner's mindset, right? Of a user that's just coming in and trying it for the first time, and how easy for them to try it. Like, do they get the pricing? How quickly was that sign up flow? How quickly do they get value? How simple overall it is? These are all unconscious friction elements that a lot of times we put in. And because we're not measuring it, because we don't have a team on it, because they're off doing other things, they're off thinking about different metrics, that friction just tends to grow and grow and grow. And you have to use these more expensive, capital inefficient ways to grow. So anyways, think about that. I'd love to hear from you guys. What are some other elements of friction you've seen put in for companies you've worked for or other ones? I always love looking at the comments. And thanks again for joining SaaS CMO Pro.